Okay guys, this is our second to the last time that we're going to be doing a read aloud. We are almost done with this book, so I'm going to just dive in here, and things are going to quickly progress as we go through these next few chapters, so pay attention and hold on tight. You guys should be taking notes as we go through here because your lit talk is due this week. Here we go. It happens, as most things do, in the smallest of ways. I take a few clippings, and I'm not thinking about what I'll do with them. I'm getting out of Dell's car 3 days later, and the monthly maintenance man had trimmed the lone jade plant in front of the entrance of the apartment building. A few of the cut pieces are still on the ground, so I pick them up, and I take the clippings inside, and I place them in a water glass. The light is good in the front window. It's south-facing. I have counseling this morning. I walk from the nail salon to Dell's office, and I realize that I'm looking at the lawns and trees and flower beds as I make my way there. I haven't seen them until today, which means she hadn't been noticing them until today. I know it's not possible that all of this stuff was planted in the last week. What have I been looking at for the last 6 weeks? I arrive at Dell's office, and we pretend, as always, that nothing has changed and that we don't live in the same apartment complex on the same floor of the same neighborhood of Bakersfield. He doesn't drive Patty and me to the nail salon every morning. He doesn't eat dinner with us. He doesn't watch hours of weird TV with Kwang Ha. I slid into the chair, and he says, "We need to talk about going back to school," and I say, "I'm not ready." And Del Duke looks at me, and whatever my face is doing seems to be working because he shrugs and says, "Okay." We spend the rest of the session pretty much staring at nothing, and then when it's time for me to go, he says, "Tell me one thing I can do to make your life better." And I'm surprised when my voice comes out of my body. "You could get me a pack of sunflower seeds." Del leans forward. "For eating?" I answer. "For planting." He nods. "For planting?" I say. "For planting." Patty and I ride the bus at the end of the day back to the apartment, and Dell's waiting for us in the living room. He's with Kwang Ha, and the TV is on. He gets up and takes us into the kitchen. He has 24 packets of sunflower seeds spread out on the counter. I could grow a field of sunflowers. He says, "I never knew that there were so many kinds. I wasn't sure what you wanted, so I got 'em all." I look down at the sunflower packets, and I see honey bears and strawberry blondes, and there's vanilla ice and Chianti hybrids, and I see Fantasia and Del Sol. He's even picked up a pack of pollen-free bloomers. I stare at these seed envelopes, and it's too much. My eyelashes collect tears. For so long I couldn't cry, but I guess once you learn, it's like everything else. It gets easier with practice. I know that Del is not a very competent person. He's not even a particularly interesting person unless he's judged by his organizational disorders, but until this moment I hadn't realized that he's actually a caring person. I don't know what to say. So I scoop up the seed packets and I go straight to my room. I hear Del ask Patty, "Did I do something wrong?" And I don't hear an answer. After dinner, I go down the hall and I tell Duke that I'm going to open a few of the packets. He comes back to number 28, and together with we spread out some seeds onto wet paper towel that I've placed on a cookie sheet. And then I explain that for a few days we will keep these seeds moist. This will ease the process of germination. Mai and Del watch. They look pretty interested, actually. I tell them sunflowers are indigenous to the Americas. They came from Mexico. From the other room, a voice says, "My dad came from Mexico." Kwang Ha pretends he's never paying attention to us, but apparently he is. Chapter 41. Mai could not remember ever feeling this way. Maybe it was because her brother hadn't been scowling so often in her direction, and her mother hadn't been telling her to put things away. Mai sat on her bed and appreciated that she had an actual room with walls and a door that belonged to her and to Willow, at least for right now. Maybe it was the acorn. Willow had put it on her night table. The kid was slowly beginning to collect things. She had gathered the small bead-like pods that fell from the trees in Penfold Street. She found a white feather at a bus stop and a speckled rock on the gutter out front. Mai felt like this was some kind of beginning. She knew that at any minute they would be told to pack up their things and leave. But up until the very second that happened, Mai was going to enjoy this new life. So she took long hot showers, even though it was wasting water and bad for the planet. She arranged and rearranged her clothes in every possible opportunity, admiring the hangers and the shelving in the closets. She stretched her arms out wide when she slept so they dangled over the edge of the bunk bed, because now she wouldn't be hitting a face or slapping the back of a neck. Mai cut pictures out of magazines and put photos of people she didn't know but just liked up on the walls. She found a box of red paper lanterns in the attic storage at the nail salon, and she bought a string of Christmas tree lights and threaded them through the round fixtures, which she then hung in the bedroom. It made the low ceiling come alive. And what she knew for certain was that the weight of the world no longer felt like it rested entirely on her shoulders. Now we're going to switch to a different person speaking here. Ario drove his taxi across town to the college bookstore. He stood in the long line at the cash register waiting to pay. Books were so expensive, especially textbooks. He held 2 pieces of required reading for the introductory course in biology against his chest. They were both used, and that was a good thing. Someone had taken a yellow pen and marked up one of the books. Ario hoped that the right parts were highlighted. Just the idea that there were important sections of the book and other sections that didn't deserve a swipe of a yellow pen made his stomach hurt. Suddenly he couldn't do it. He hadn't been to school in 14 years. Now he was surrounded by so many young people he felt old. Ancient, really. He was 35 years old, but hadn't he recently found a gray hair? 3 strands. They grew on the very top of his head, in the center, shooting up from the thick black like the rebels that they clearly were. Those 3 hairs were outlaws with confidence that one day they would conquer the world, which was his head. Ario was almost at the cash register when he spun around. He should put the books back. Who was he to think that he could take a college course? Why would anyone ever want him to work in a hospital? How would he even pay for a degree? This was just a big waste of time. Ario moved back to the maze of aisles, but the large store was crowded and he suddenly couldn't remember where the books had came from. And there was no way he was going to just dump the textbooks back on the shelf. He wasn't going to be that guy. Settle. New plan. Just buy things. Owning them didn't mean he had to go to class. Maybe he could read the stuff in his spare time. He didn't have to wait every day of his life. Didn't he have to wait every day of his life for people? Who was he kidding? This wasn't happening. Could he give the books away as gifts? They were used and they had yellow pen marks all over them. What kind of present was that? Ario leaned back on his heels and allowed his eyes to close just for the briefest moment. He needed to talk to her, his angel. She would appreciate the textbooks. It was with her on his mind that he stepped back into the line for the 3rd cash register. The young woman behind the cash register rang up his purchase, and when he handed over the cash, she hesitated. Did she look surprised? People didn't seem to pay that way. The woman hit the button to make sure the register drawer opened. Suddenly a light swirled and a buzzer went off. Everyone stared. At him? At the clerk? At the spinning red ball up front? What had he done? Ario felt his face grow hot, and then he saw someone who looked very official pointing in his direction, and the cashier giggled and she said, "You are our 1 millionth customer." He had no idea what she was talking about. His expression was blank, and she filled it with, "You won! Didn't you hear about it?" Ario shook his head. Other workers were now assembling, and the man in the burgundy jacket appeared at his elbow, and he had a pin on his chest that said manager. He held up a camera. "Smile!" Ario tried his best to make his quivering mouth form some sort of grin, but then he heard a voice from somewhere in the small crowd say, "He won $20,000, man! I was right behind him in line! Unreal!" Ario looked around and realized that the cardboard triangles suspended from the ceiling all said, "Anniversary celebration. Be our 1 millionth customer and win." A woman held out her cell phone to his face and said, "Can you tell us your name? Are you a student? What are you studying at Bakersfield College?" He realized now that she was recording him, and he managed to say, "I'm a new student. This is my first time here." The crowd gave a collective groan, followed by laughter and chatter. "His first time! Come on, I've spent a fortune in this place." As the woman continued to question him, Ario became conscious of the fact that he was smiling as he spoke, and he couldn't stop. He filled out all kinds of forms from the bookstore and from the government for taxes. They officially took his picture. This time he was holding a big oversized check, and then he was given the real thing. Everyone was so nice to him. He was slapped on the back and shook hands with dozens of students, and he hugged people he had never seen in his life. Finally, as he walked back to the taxi, moving across the wide parking lot in the midday sun, he checked his watch. He had been inside that place for almost 3 hours. But in his back pocket, folded half in his worn, shiny leather wallet, was a slip of paper worth a year's salary driving his taxi, and that money would pay for all of the college classes he would ever want to take. Chapter 42. Every weekend, Patty goes to the farmer's market on Golden State Avenue at F Street, and she likes to be one of the first ones there. Today, Mai went with her because Patty's using Dell's car and they can get more things and she'll help carry the stuff. They're going to pick up 2 bags of potting soil for me at the nursery on their way back. The best way to grow sunflowers is in the ground, not in pots or planters. They have enormous taproots that burrow deep. My plan is to start them off in small containers and then locate a place later for transplanting. Dell and I go through the big blue recycling dumpster at the carport, and we find 23 containers for me to use as planters. We pick out an assortment of tin cans and a few plastic tubs that once held sour cream and spreadable cheese, and even a few milk cartons. I don't think that I've seen Dell so happy with his as when he's rooting around the dumpster. And when we have what we need, we go to the laundry room and wash the cans and containers in the deep sink. Then Dell punches holes in the bottoms with a kitchen knife, which gets ruined because you're not supposed to use it for that, but he doesn't seem to care. When Patty gets back with the potting soil, we're going to plant 9 different types of sunflowers. But another thing happens when we are readying our potting containers. Sadhu Kumar, who rents his extra bedroom to Dell, comes down with 3 computers, and Dell says, "What are you doing with those?" And Sadhu is getting ready to toss them in the big blue bin. They're going into the recycling. I size up the machines. They don't appear very old. I ask, "You can't fix them?" Sadhu snorts, like a horse might do. "They are junk, not worth the effort." I look at the computers. 2 are laptops and 1 is a larger desktop, but the same company makes them all. Sadhu Kumar is sort of an angry guy, and I think that he might have had a lot of disappointment in his life. It can turn a person bitter. I wonder if that's happening to me. Nothing's worse than a sour kid. You should save that for later. When you're old, it hurts to get up from a chair. You have a reason to have a permanently pinched face. I make a note to myself to be sad and even mad, but not 100% angry at the world. There's a huge difference. Now I ask Sadhu, "Can I have those computers?" Mr. Sour Bitter Man says, "If you want junk, take junk." Del Duke looks offended, and he says, "One man's garbage is another man's treasure." Sadhu only seems more pained at the thought that as he walks away. We were all waiting for the potting soil, so Del and I carry the 3 machines up to number 28 right away, and I start to take them apart. I think that I might be able to get 1 working computer from 3, and I see that could be possible using the logic board from the first one, the chipsets and plugins from the other 2. I'm not sure it will function properly, but if it does, this computer will be a gift to Del from me. He just doesn't know it yet. I'm at the kitchen table, separating the peripheral wiring, when Del Duke's cell phone barks. He chose a dog as his ringtone. It doesn't seem like something a cat person would do. It bothered me for a while when we were cleaning up the place that I didn't find a single thing to indicate that Cheddar had ever lived there. This man who couldn't be bothered to throw anything away. I've been waiting for the appropriate time to bring this up. Once he's off his phone, I ask, "Do you miss Cheddar?" And Del looked confused. "Say again?" I repeat, "Do you miss Cheddar?" And Del's eyes narrow. "You mean because Patty cooks Vietnamese food?" What I miss is my meatloaf, and I'm not going to follow up. Patty and I return, and we're ready to begin. Patty says that she'd like to help us, but she's testing some kind of new nail polish, and it wouldn't be fair to the product to stick her hands in dirt. I'm surprised when Kwang Ha comes downstairs to help with the planning. He picks out a container. I must admit that judging by the shape of this container, this is the most intriguing of our dumpster planters. It's rectangular, but it has soft edges. Kwang Ha is confusing because just when I'm certain that he has sawdust for brains, he'll exhibit some sort of real insight. He picked the best-looking container for his seedling. While he obsessively pulls off the stickers from the sides of the former gelato carton, Mai and Del and I fill everything else up with fresh dirt. When he's finally ready, I hand Kwang Ha the cookie pan, which has the moist seeds, and I say, "Plant 3, equidistant, about an inch down." Maybe he doesn't hear me because he takes a single seed, and I say, "Take 3. He mutters, "I only want 1. I don't want to be the one bossing around, especially him, so I say, "It might fail. There are only going to be in these containers for a short time. We are just starting out here." He will not be persuaded, and I can't read his expression, so maybe he's making fun of me as he says, "I'm putting all of my hopes and dreams into this 1 seed. That's how I want it." Del is now watching, and his mouth opens, and I think he's going to say something, but he doesn't. Mai then turns to her brother. "We're doing this for Willow. Don't be a jerk. She wants us to plant 3 seeds. Kwang Ha looks from Mai back to me. "This one is mine. I'm not doing it for her." And Del turns to us. "You 2 girls do your own thing." I get a lump in my throat, and it's not because Kwang Ha won't listen, or because Del doesn't support my planting methods. I feel moved because they aren't treating me like I'll break into a million pieces. Maybe that means I'm on my way back to some sort of normal. I can focus again, if only slightly. It doesn't take long for a routine to really fall into place. We all get in Dell's car every morning. We drop off Maya and Kwang Ha at high school, and then Dell takes Patty and me to the salon. Most days, Maya walks over after school, and then she and I ride the bus back to Gardens of Glenwood. Patty stays later, but is home for dinner. Maya and I get things started for the evening meal. Patty can't just walk across an alley to cook anymore. There's a lot of her dishes take time. This means that we're in the kitchen in the afternoon, which opens right up to the living room. I can't help but observe Kwang Ha and later Dell when he gets home from work and positions himself next to Kwang Ha in front of the TV. The two seem to somehow understand each other. Maybe it's because they're both on the outside of something. I'm invisible to them unless it comes to Kwang Ha's homework. I help him with the math problem, which is how it all started. I can do his assignment in a few minutes, but I take a lot more time than I need to so he won't feel bad. I know that doing his schoolwork is morally wrong, so I try to explain basic concepts before I hand over the material. I can't say that he is a good listener. His only serious activity besides watching anything on TV is doodling. He draws cartoon-like people with large heads. Kwang Ha has a somewhat large head, and I'm not sure if there's a connection there. Every day, Dell asks me when I plan to go back to middle school, and I want to say, how does never sound, but I don't. Instead, I usually pretend not to hear or mumble something that has a few indistinct syllables. So today, Dell adds, there's a lot you're missing there, and I can't help myself but saying, name one thing. Dell looks confused, but it's not a trick question. I really want to know. I can tell that Kwang Ha is changing channels, but he's paying attention. He can't stand high school, and finally Dell says, you don't go to PE. And I just stare at him. Dell's belly looks like he has a basketball under his shirt. He has lost some weight in the last month, but he's got a long way to go before he's any sort of athletic specimen. But it's as if he's some kind of mind reader, because he says, I'm going to start running. Tomorrow is my first day. Kwang Ha shoots him a total look of disbelief, but I'm the one who says, really? And Dell nods. Are you training for something? I say. Dell says, I'm going to be joining some teams in the spring, and I want to be in shape. Kwang Ha is giggling now. Not laughing, giggling. It's different. It is suppressed and high-pitched and contains an element of disbelief. I've never heard Kwang Ha giggle. It must be a very unusual sound, because the next thing I know, Maya is out of her bedroom, standing in the hallway. What's going on? Kwang Ha starts to answer, but he can't. He's a giggling mess. Somehow this form of high-pitched laughter is contagious, because now Maya is giggling, and she's watching her brother. And whatever he's doing is spreading. Dell has had enough. He gets up from the couch, goes into the kitchen, and I follow him. We stand there, and we can still hear the giggling in the other room. Are you really planning on running? Dell mumbles a form of yes, and then adds, but I'm not going to join any kind of team in the spring. I made that part up. I'm just going to run for myself. I don't think that's strange, because almost everything that I pursue is for my own understanding or amusement. I believe that having an audience naturally corrupts the performance. I might be self-justifying, but I say, I think that's a great idea. Patty had to find something for Willow to do. It was the only way to keep her from staring off into space. She didn't like the look on her face when that happened. The girl was so still, like a statue or a dead person. In the nail salon, she could scare the customers, so Patty gave Willow the lease agreement for the salon, and the kid actually read it. She pointed out 3 areas with inconsistencies and made a document for Patty to use the next time she met with the landlord. It was impossible not to be impressed. When Patty casually said that she wished she had room to add another manicurist, Willow made a floor plan of the nail salon that optimized the space, moving the front counter and 3 of the 4 manicure stations, which opened up a room for a new chair and a foot spa. Patty immediately took action. And the crazy thing is that it felt less crowded, not more, once they added a new person. The kid was obsessed with disease and infection. She saw problems that didn't exist, and it grated on Patty's nerves. She finally told Willow to just write down all of her anxieties. The next day, Willow handed her a detailed report on the incident of infection from manicure and pedicure treatment. Patty got angry. She never had a single complaint from a customer with a health problem. Patty avoided the 12-year-old for the rest of the day, sending her back to the apartment early. But then that night, Patty had a dream. It was a gruesome nightmare in which all of her clients kneeled forward, face first, onto the manicure desk. The next morning, Patty asked Willow to talk her through the information. Her eyes glazed over when Willow spoke of the new drug-resistant bacteria, but she got the gist of the whole thing. That afternoon, new, more powerful disinfectant was purchased for the basin of the foot spas. Willow insisted that it never be watered down, as had done in the past to make the chemicals go further. Patty had all the manicurists stay an hour late that night, and Willow gave them a presentation in Vietnamese, which was impressive for that reason alone. The following Monday, once the changes were all in place, Patty let Willow post the 10 most important health rules that every nail salon should follow. Patty put Willow's manifesto in the front window, and she adopted the girls' proposed new slogan, setting the standard in California for health and safety in nail care. But Patty was still surprised when new customers began appearing. Willow had said that it would happen. Skip ahead here. The sunflower seeds are coming up. We planted seeds in 23 containers, which have pretty much taken over the kitchen, and we have germination in all of them. I don't make a chart and monitor the percentage of germination because I don't do that anymore, but it does cross my mind. Del and Mai are both excited to see. Before I can stop him, Del gets all gooey and overwaters everything. Guang Ha acts as if he could care less, even though his single seed sprouted and is already bigger than the others. I find a doodle of the seedling on a pad of paper near the TV. It's very precise, so Guang Ha had to have gotten very close to take a real good look at the plant. And in his picture, the seedling is growing out the top of a man's large head. I'm not sure why this pleases me so much, so I say, Guang Ha, do you think I could have this drawing? His eyes doesn't leave the television, but he makes a noise which I can describe. It is a form of a grunt. Is that a yes? And I take it, and he waves his hand in that direction. My social worker has told me that they are actively looking for a foster parent to take me. I've had 3 home visitation checks, and all 3 were fine because we do all now live at the Garden of Glenwood, for now at least. I'm here on a temporary basis, so I need to be grateful. That's what I'm working on. I pick my way through the meal that we're eating that night, and when the timing seems right, I say, I want to thank you all for what you've done for me, and no one answers. It's like I pulled a rotten fish out of the refrigerator and I placed it on the table. My words have a smell. Everyone goes from looking uncomfortable to embarrassed, and then Guang Ha just gets up and takes his plate and leaves the table. I know he wasn't one of my early supporters, but I didn't realize what a difference they've made for me. Or maybe they do, and they're just keeping the knowledge to themselves. I go to sleep early that night, and I wake up every hour. In the morning, I decide that I've done a disservice to myself in terms of physical achievement. So I think it's time to spark an interest, and I think I am going to start running. I'm thinking of running, I say. Guang Ha hears me, and his weird giggle returns. What I meant is I would like to start training, and I hope you could help me. Guang Ha is really giggling now, and he's trying not to hide it anymore. Mai then comes out of a room and says, I'll do it too. I need athletic shoes, but I only wear work boots. So it's time for the new me. It's time for the new me to get new clothes. And we'll continue reading more tomorrow.